What a moment that was last year in the AFC Championship when Joe Burrow, a year removed from a torn ACL, goes into Arrowhead, spots them 18 points, and then comes back and makes it even worse. I mean, the easiest loss to deal with is where you just get your doors blown off from the get-go like the Giants last week when you never were in it. It's just go ahead and go to bed. Then it's the hard-fought back-and-forth game that who knows who's going to win? It's drama. It's hanging in the balance. That's hard to deal with. The worst to deal with is when you've got the damn thing won. It's over. It's coronation time. Bring out the crown, and you find out the hard way the other team is going to be wearing it. That was something last year. And Peter, it makes me even more amazed by this other person that Joe Burrow morphs into when it's time for playoff games. We never knew he was going to be that way until he got in that spot. He did it last year. He's doing it this year. And the question now is, can he do it again at Arrowhead Stadium?
Here's the amazing thing I think about Joe Burrow. Mike, if you think about it, we're talking about in the last, I guess it'd be now the last 56 weeks, he's played Kansas City 3 times. The first time he played him was late in the regular season in 2021, actually early January 2022. Completed 30 of 39, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, beats Kansas City 34-31. Next time he plays him, completes 60% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Nice performance. Bengals 27, Kansas City 24. Last time he plays them, in early December this year, again, 27-24, the Bengals win. And he has another efficient day, completes 81% of his passes. And so now in these 3 games, 8 touchdowns, 1 turnover, and he's 3-0. And I asked this question, not rhetorically, but factually. If the Cincinnati Bengals win this game at Arrowhead on Sunday and beat Kansas City for the 4th time in 13 months, my question is, who's the best quarterback in football? Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow? I mean, I think you're going to have to say Joe Burrow. With all due respect, because, look, I think Patrick Mahomes one day is going to go up on the Mount Rushmore, and I think Joe Burrow has a heck of a chance to do that, what he's done winning 3 road playoff games. Joe Burrow, in the last 54 weeks, has won more playoff games on the road than the Bengals won in their 55-year history before this season. And or before last season, excuse me. At some point, we have to start to think about the greatness of this quarterback that we're seeing. Somebody from Pro Football Focus told me the other day that Burrow's game in Buffalo was as close to a perfect game as a player can play. And he did it basically in a snow and sleet storm. I don't know, Mike. I think we're watching, 2 generations later, I think we're watching the birth of a Joe Namath here.
And, we're looking for the next Peyton Manning-Tom Brady rivalry as well. And it doesn't become a rivalry until one of the guys, or until both of the guys have won at least one. It's kind of lopsided for now. That's what raises the stakes for this one. For Patrick Mahomes, this is a chance to make it a true rivalry versus, I remember when Penn State and West Virginia used to play every year. West Virginia viewed it as a rivalry. Penn State viewed it as, just a little loose lint that has made its way onto their shoulder. And because we never won. We never won.
Yeah.
It was like 29 years between victories. And when 1984, I was at that game when West Virginia finally beat Penn State with Jeff Hostetler at quarterback. I mean, the whole state burned all couches in the vicinity. So it's becoming that way for the Chiefs. That's why this game's so important. You throw. Can you imagine the Bengals going into Arrowhead Stadium with a Super Bowl berth on the line 2 straight years and winning both times? Unbelievable.
Incredible.
The closest comparison I can think of is, when the Steelers and Oilers had a thing going. The Oilers kept having to go back to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh kept beating them in the AFC Championship. This is the road team coming in and consistently winning. That's what's at stake here. And that's what makes it so fascinating, because on one hand, you would look at this and say, this is exactly the game Patrick Mahomes wins. This is exactly the game that he shows up and he reminds everyone that he's the best quarterback in the NFL. And then you remember, wait a minute, this is Joe Burrow, who just doesn't care about that, who seems to get better when those stakes get higher, when the drama increases. And that's why I had a hell of a time. I wish we didn't have to pick winners this weekend. I'd like to just enjoy the games without trying to be proven right or fearful of proven wrong. I got no idea who's going to win this game, and that's the best possible game to watch as a fan.
I was thinking this week, Mike, that Joe Burrow on the road now, in the last 2 playoff years, he's beaten Patrick Mahomes on the road. He's beaten Josh Allen on the road. And I want you just to think back to, and look, I remember it very well. I want you to think back to the only college football game that I watched in 2019. I think you know the one I'm talking about. LSU at Alabama. Joe Burrow going into Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I remember vividly his first pass of the game, he threw it like 25 yards downfield, a seam route that was perfectly thrown, right in the hands, I forget, maybe Justin Jefferson, maybe Jamar Chase, I forget. But that was his first pass of the game. And a couple of months later, before the draft, I got Joe Brady on the phone, okay? And Joe Brady obviously was his coach his last year at LSU. He was his guru. He went from the Saints to LSU and then got, went to Carolina after that. But I'll never forget, I asked him, I said, Joe, that first pass that Joe Burrow threw in Bryant-Denny Stadium, the biggest game of the year, the biggest game in maybe in years, LSU going in there as whatever the odds were. But the first pass he threw was sort of deep, intermediate to deep down the field. And I said, when you go into a game like this, don't Burrow and you talk about, hey, listen, let's get a couple of completions to get comfortable and to take the emotion out of here. And he laughed and he goes, Joe Burrow doesn't need to get comfortable. He never has. In no game has he ever said, hey, let's get a couple easy completions to start this. He goes, he was going for the jugular on the first throw of the game. And that, to me, is who Joe Burrow is. Now, amazingly, he's beaten 2 great quarterbacks on the road, one of them decisively. Obviously, the Mahomes one last year was a close game, a field goal game. He beat Josh Allen decisively. And, to me, that is the guy who I want. I want a guy who almost likes playing on the road. You know what the 49ers used to say about playing on the road back in their glory days, Mike? I remember this vividly. Bill Walsh would walk into the locker room and say, men, 45 of us, that's it. 45 players and a coaching staff. That's it. Against a city, against a state, against a region, against millions of people. It's just us against the world. And the players got to just love that. They loved going and sticking the proverbial middle finger at the authority figures and all that and saying, we're better than you. And I think Joe Burrow loves that too.
This conversation is a prime example for me of the water's edge of analytics. This is where statistics and past performance and next-gen stats go out the window, and it comes down to what's inside the individual quarterback when it's time to go out into a difficult situation, season on the line. What do you do? Do you make that big throw? Do you miss that big throw? Doesn't matter what you did in the regular season. Doesn't matter what you did on 1st and 10 with 10 minutes left in the second quarter when nobody really cared. What matters is what you do with the game that has the season riding on it, with the drive that has the season riding on it, with the throw that has the season riding on it. And we've seen time and again, some guys embrace that moment and bend it their way like Joe Burrow. There have been others, but Joe Burrow is the one who does it now more than anyone and better than anyone. And then there's the guy that, and I'm not going to name names. I'm really not going to name names. I probably don't need to name names. But there's the guys who will have these great regular seasons and touchdowns high and interceptions low, and it's time to go out and make your legacy. And there's just something that just rattles them enough inside where they just can't do it. Burrow can. And we don't know. That's the thing. We never know who can do it until they do it. All the scouting, all the money, all the time that's spent trying to get inside these guys and what makes them tick. You don't know what they're going to do in that moment, and maybe they don't even know, Peter. That's what I love about these kinds of games and this kind of pressure. It doesn't matter what you do from week 1 to week 18. What matters is what you do in this game.
Hey, Mike, you know what? And I know we're going to talk about the NFC game a little bit later, but how perfect is it when you look at Joe Burrow and you say, well, you know, everybody could have seen he was great. Look at 2019, where, you know, in the playoffs in 2019, 16 touchdowns, no interceptions, and sweeps 3 games. So, I mean, everybody can see that. It's why the Dolphins reportedly offered 5 ones for Joe Burrow to the Bengals to move up just 4 spots in the draft. Or 5 spots in the draft, whatever it was. And Bengals said no. And as Mike Brown told me last year, he said it wouldn't have mattered what they offered. It literally would not have mattered what they offered. We were taking Joe Burrow. That was our guy, because you don't win without a quarterback. The Bengals are going to be relevant for the next 12 years, period. They're going to be relevant for as long as Joe Burrow takes snaps from center in the Queen City. And let me just make one other point. You know why there is nothing in sports harder to quantify, harder to scout, harder to find, harder to figure out than who is going to be a great quarterback in the NFL? And great, I shouldn't, who's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL? I'll tell you why. You know, 31 teams passed on Brock Purdy 7 times. The 32nd team passed on him 6 times. And finally picked him the 7th time, the San Francisco 49ers. And I only mention that because how in the world do you pass on a guy who started 48 games in a Power 5 conference, went 29-19, played in Austin, Texas in front of 100,000, played in Norman, Oklahoma a couple of times in front of 90,000, dueled Jalen Hurts in one of the great college games in recent history, 42-41, they lost. Iowa State lost. My point is, hey, look, it's hard to find these guys, but you didn't have to look very hard when it was Joe Burrow. And look, Brock Purdy, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions since he took this job. In 8 games, the dude has not fumbled the football one time. In 32 quarters, he's turned it over 3 times. That is why the 49ers have a chance this week. But as far as Burrow goes, I mean, he is Cool Hand Luke and Paulie Walnuts rolled into one.
It is quite a comparison and quite a combination. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.